months to breathe, 6 months to find what I couldn't see. I was living but I wasn't alive, building empires while I died inside. Every heartbeat was a warning sign that I ignored until I ran out of time. But I'm rising now from the ashes of who I used to be. I'm rising now, finally learning how to breathe. They said 6 months I chose to live. This is my second chance, and I won't let go. It's never too late to start again.
Chen collapsed. The sky over Manhattan was impossibly blue. He remembered that detail later, how cruel. It seemed that the world could be so beautiful on the day everything ended. 25 years of climbing, fighting, sacrificing, and it all came apart under fluorescent lights, in a room that smelled of expensive coffee and ambition. At 52, Michael Chen had everything society tells us to want. The corner office on the 47th floor, the 7-figure salary, the house in Greenwich with 6 bedrooms, the respect of powerful men who feared him when he frowned. He was the son of immigrants who'd worked 18-hour days in a Queens laundromat. His mother used to say, "In America you can become anyone," and Michael had run with that promise run until his lungs burned, until his heart screamed, until his body became just another machine to be optimized. Of course he was successful. Look at the numbers. Look at the title. Success wasn't a question for Michael Chen. It was a fact. But here's what nobody saw. The man who commanded boardrooms couldn't walk up 2 flights of stairs without his heart pounding dangerously. The executive who managed billion-dollar portfolios managed his own health with whiskey and denial. Every morning, the same ritual. Wake at 4:30 a.m. not by choice, but because anxiety made sleep impossible. Stumble to the bathroom. Avoid the mirror. 4 Advil for the headache that never left. 3 espressos to feel human. Then the armor, the tailored suit. The confident smile, the persona of a man who had it all figured out. His body sent signals constantly. Please stop. Please rest. Please. He'd become an expert at not listening. The chest pain started 3 years before the collapse. The first time he was in a meeting with the CEO. Sudden pressure, like a boulder on his sternum. Vision narrowing. Sweat beading on his forehead. "Michael, you okay?" "Fine. Just heartburn." He white-knuckled through the meeting, then drove to a clinic in New Jersey far enough that no one would see him. The young doctor frowned at his EKG. "Mr. Chen, these readings are concerning. I'd recommend a full cardiac workup." "I don't have time for that." "Sir, your heart is fine." "I know my body." He didn't know his body. He hadn't listened to it in decades. "I want you to pause here. Think about your own life, not the version you show the world, the curated photos, the confident handshakes. The version only you see, the 3 a.m. version. What signals are you ignoring? What price are you paying for a success that might not even be real?" Michael thought the rules didn't apply to him. He thought he could outwork biology, outmaneuver mortality. He was wrong. We're all wrong when we think that way. The morning of the fall started like any other. 4:30 wake-up. Pills. Coffee. Armor. Today was the annual shareholder presentation. 200 powerful investors waiting for Michael Chen to deliver. He'd done this 15 times, except something was different. His hands shook more than usual. His chest felt tight, not sharp pain, but pressure that wouldn't release. His thoughts moved through molasses. Just need more coffee. He drank 3 more cups before walking into that boardroom. The room was beautiful morning light, streaming through windows, casting everything in gold. The mahogany table, the crystal glasses. He'd spent his life fighting to be in rooms like this. Standing at the podium looking at 200 waiting faces, Michael felt nothing but emptiness. Why am I here? What is this all for? He shook his head and began. Good morning, everyone. As you can see from Q1 results, our strategic initiatives have yielded. The words came automatically. But underneath, something was happening. Vision blurring. Pressure building. Knuckles going white on the podium. Just get through this. Which positions us favorably for the upcoming fiscal year. The room began to spin. Projections indicate a 15% increase in. He couldn't remember what came next. For the first time in 15 years, Michael Chen forgot his lines. Silence. 200 people staring. Then his body made the decision his mind had refused to make. His knees buckled. The world tilted. And Michael Chen, the untouchable, the unstoppable, crumpled to the cold marble floor. In those suspended seconds before impact, he saw his own reflection in the gleaming surface, a face he barely recognized. Gray. Hollow. Already half gone. Who are you? What have you become? Then darkness. In the emergency room, between beeping machines and hurried consultations, Michael had his first moment of clarity in years. A simple question that shattered everything. If I die today, what will I be remembered for? He thought about his daughters. When had he last really told them he loved them? He couldn't remember. His wife, 23 years watching him disappear into work and drink. His mother, still alive at 81, still waiting for visits that rarely came. Every birthday missed. Every school play skipped. Every I'll make it up to you that never came true. The deals he'd killed himself to close, they'd be forgotten in a quarter. The empire he'd built at the cost of his health, his family, his soul, it would continue just fine without him. This is the cruel equation nobody tells you when you're young and hungry. You are replaceable at work. You are irreplaceable at home. Yet we give our best hours to the place that will forget us instantly. And we give leftovers to the people who need us most. Michael had gotten this equation exactly backward. And now, watching his heartbeat trace across a monitor in irregular peaks, he finally understood the cost. The doctor wasn't gentle. Mr. Chen, your liver function is severely compromised. Your heart shows significant damage. Frankly, it's a miracle you're alive. How bad? Bad enough that we need to discuss your future, or whether you'll have one. Whether you'll have one. Your body didn't betray you today, the doctor continued. It's been warning you for years. Today was just the first time it got loud enough that you couldn't ignore it. Michael thought about every pain he'd waved away. Every headache drowned in pills. Every signal refused. What do I do? That's up to you. But the path you've been on leads to one place, and you can't come back from there. That night, alone in a hospital room, surrounded by machines tracking his failing body, Michael did something he hadn't done since childhood. He cried. Not elegant tears, ugly heaving sobs. He cried for his father who'd worked himself to death, for his neglected mother, for his disappearing marriage, for daughters who'd stopped reaching out. He cried for 25 years of wrong choices. And somewhere in that flood, something shifted. A crack appeared in the armor he'd worn so long it had fused with his skin. Through that crack, light began to enter. At 3 a.m., watching dawn creep over Manhattan through a hospital window, Michael made a decision. He didn't know what it would cost him. He didn't know about the diagnosis coming in 2 days, 6 months to live. He didn't know about the woman he'd meet in a Brooklyn bookstore, or the brutal mornings on the Hudson River, or the friend who would tempt him back to destruction. All he knew was this. Something had to change. He had to change. Or the next time his body hit the floor, he wouldn't get back up. The fall wasn't the end. It was the end of his first life, the one built on lies and unquestioned expectations. In the wreckage, something new was waiting to be born. But first, he would hear the words that would change everything. 6 months. Just 6 months to live, or so they thought. 2 days after the collapse, Michael sat in a white consultation room at Memorial Sloan Kettering. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A framed diploma from Harvard Medical hung on the wall. Outside the window, Central Park exploded with spring joggers. Families, children chasing pigeons. Life happening everywhere. Doctor. Patterson entered with a manila folder. His face revealed nothing. 30 years of delivering bad news had taught him to wear his expression like a mask. Mr. Chen, thank you for coming in. Just tell me. The doctor sat down slowly, opened the folder. closed it again. Your test results are comprehensive. I'll be direct with you. Michael nodded. He'd built a career on directness. He could handle it, or so he thought. Stage 4 liver cirrhosis. Significant cardiac damage. Your kidneys are showing early signs of failure. The words landed like stones dropping into still water. Your years of lifestyle choices have accumulated. The body can compensate for a long time, until it can't. Michael stared at the diplomas on the wall. These credentials were about to end his life. How long? Dr. Patterson paused. In that pause lived everything, every drink. Michael had poured every warning he'd ignored, every night he'd chosen work over rest. If you continue your current path, 6 months. Maybe less. 6 months. The words didn't make sense at first. They floated in the air like a foreign language. Michael had planned the next 6 years. A major acquisition. An expansion into Asian markets. His daughter's wedding. Retirement at 60. 6 months? He looked down at his hands. They were trembling. The diagnosis papers he held made a soft rustling. Sound the only noise in the suffocating silence. There must be options. Treatments. I can afford... Money can't fix this, mister. Chen, time can't be purchased. The damage is extensive. So that's it? I just wait to die? Dr. Patterson leaned forward. For the first time, something human cracked through his professional mask. I said, if you continue your current path. That's the key phrase. The body has remarkable capacity to heal if given the chance, but it requires complete transformation. Everything about how you live would need to change. And if I do that? Then, we don't know. Medicine isn't prophecy. I've seen patients given 6 months live for 6 years. I've seen patients given 6 years gone in 6 weeks. The variable isn't just the disease. It's the person. Michael walked out of that hospital into the most ordinary Tuesday afternoon in history. Taxis honked. A hot dog vendor shouted prices. A woman argued loudly on her phone. The world was aggressively, insultingly normal. Didn't they know? Didn't anyone understand? He had just been handed a death sentence, and everyone was acting like it was just another day. There's a strange loneliness that comes with mortality. We all know we're going to die in theory, but it remains abstract, distant, something that happens to other people, until suddenly it doesn't. Suddenly you're standing on a Manhattan sidewalk with a piece of paper that says your body is failing, and everyone around you is worried about lunch, reservations and parking tickets, and whether their team will win tonight. Michael had never felt more alone in his life. He started walking. He didn't know where, just away. Away from the hospital, away from the diagnosis, away from the man he'd been for 52 years. His feet carried him through neighborhoods he'd never noticed during his chauffeured commutes, past storefronts and restaurants, past couples holding hands, past elderly men playing chess in parks. They don't know how lucky they are, he thought. They have time. They have tomorrow. I have 6 months. Hours later, he wasn't sure how. Michael found himself on a quiet street in Brooklyn. The neighborhood was nothing like his world. No glass towers, no power suits, just brownstones and small shops and people who looked like they actually lived their lives. Instead of just performing them, a small bookstore caught his eye. The kind of place he would normally walk past without a second glance. But today, nothing was normal. He pushed open the door. The shop smelled of old paper and coffee. Stacks of books created narrow pathways. Warm light filtered through dusty windows. Michael stood in the entrance, not knowing why he was there, not knowing what he was looking for. You look like a man who's lost something he can't name. The voice came from behind a tower of books. A woman emerged, late 50s, silver hair pulled back, reading glasses. Perched on her nose, her eyes were warm but sharp. I'm just browsing. She studied him the way a doctor studies an X-ray. It made him uncomfortable. No, she said finally. You're not browsing. You're running. But here's the thing about running. She stepped closer. You can't outrun what's inside you. Something about this stranger made Michael's defenses crumble. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the diagnosis still ringing in his ears. Maybe he'd simply reached the end of his capacity to pretend. I just found out I'm dying, he heard himself say. 6 months. Maybe less. The words came out before he could stop them. He'd told no one, not his wife, not his daughters, not anyone. And here he was, confessing to a stranger in a Brooklyn bookstore. The woman nodded slowly. No shock. No pity. Just understanding. Sit down, she said, gesturing to a worn leather chair. I'll make tea. Her name was Dr. Sarah Williams, former oncologist, burned out after 20 years of watching patients die. Now she ran this bookstore, wrote about holistic healing, and occasionally encountered lost souls who wandered in off the street. The universe has interesting timing, she said, handing him a cup. I spent 2 decades telling people how long they had to live. Now I help them figure out how to actually live it. Michael wrapped his hands around the warm cup. The doctor said my body is failing. Your body is communicating. There's a difference. She sat across from him. Illness isn't punishment, Michael. It's a message. The final message, when all the others have been ignored. What message? That's for you to discover. But I'll tell you what I've learned from years of watching people die. She paused. The ones who really heal aren't the ones who fight their disease like an enemy. They're the ones who finally listen to what it's trying to say. Michael shook his head. That sounds like something from a self-help book. I need real solutions. Treatments. Plans. Sarah smiled. Not unkindly. You've spent your whole life making plans, haven't you? Strategies. Projections. Control. That's how you succeed. That's how you survived. There's a difference. She leaned forward. Tell me all those plans, all that control, did they make you healthy? Did they make you happy? Michael had no answer. The disease isn't the problem, Sarah continued. The disease is the result of years of stress your body couldn't process, emotions you never let yourself feel, a life lived for achievement instead of meaning. She reached for a worn journal on the shelf beside her. I give this to everyone who walks through that door looking the way you look. It's not medicine. It's not a cure. It's just empty pages. What am I supposed to do with empty pages? Fill them. With truth for once. Ask yourself questions you've spent 50 years avoiding. Michael took the journal. Its leather cover was soft, worn by other hands before his. What questions? Sarah stood up, moving toward the window. Start with the obvious ones. What do you regret? What do you wish you'd done differently? Who do you need to forgive, including yourself? She turned back to him. And the hardest question of all, if you only have 6 months left, what actually matters? That night, Michael sat alone in a hotel room. He couldn't face going home. Couldn't face his wife's questions, his daughter's concern. Not yet. Not until he understood what was happening to him. The journal lay open on the desk, empty pages staring at him like accusations. What do you regret? He picked up the pen, put it down, picked it up again, and slowly, haltingly, he began to write. I regret missing Emma's first piano recital for a client dinner. I regret not being there when Dad died because I was closing a deal in Chicago. I regret every time Lisa looked at me with hope, and I looked at my phone instead. I regret teaching my daughters that love means providing money, not presents. I regret becoming my father dying for work instead of living for family. The words poured out faster now. 25 years of regret flooding onto paper. His hand cramped. He kept writing. I regret never learning who I actually am beneath the title and the salary. I regret that it took a death sentence to make me ask these questions. I regret. He stopped, looked at what he'd written, pages and pages of regret, and for the first time, he realized something. Regret was just guilt looking backward. It changed nothing. The question wasn't what he regretted. The question was what he would do now. At 2 a.m., Michael walked to the window. The city sprawled beneath him, millions of lives, millions of stories, millions of people who would wake up tomorrow assuming they had forever. He didn't have forever. He had 6 months. Maybe. But standing there, watching the city lights flicker, Michael Chen felt something unexpected. Not fear. Not despair. Clarity. For the first time in his life, the path forward was brutally simple. No more games. No more pretense. No more someday. Everything that mattered had to happen now, or it would never happen at all. The diagnosis should have been an ending. Instead, it became a beginning, the first day of Michael's real life. But wanting to change and actually changing are very different things. The road ahead would test him in ways he never imagined. Starting with a cold morning on the Hudson River, where he would discover just how far he had fallen, and how far he would have to climb. 3 days later, he told himself it was coincidence. He was just walking. Just happened to end up on that same Brooklyn street, pushing through that same creaky door. But there are no coincidences when you're dying. Sarah looked up from her book, not surprised, almost as if she'd been waiting. You came back. I filled the journal. He placed it on the counter. 47 pages of regret, confession, questions without answers. His handwriting grew more desperate toward the end, words crashing into each other, like cars in a pileup. Sarah didn't open it. That's yours, not mine. I don't need to read your pain. She studied his face. But I see it helped. You look different. I feel different. Worse, actually. Like I've opened a wound. Good. Wounds need air to heal. She gestured to the back of the shop. Come. We need to talk about what happens next. Behind the bookstore was a small garden Michael hadn't noticed before. A patch of green hidden in the urban gray. Tomato plants climbing wooden stakes. Herbs in terracotta pots. A bench worn smooth by years of use. My therapy room, Sarah said, sitting down. More healing happens here than in any hospital I ever worked in. Michael remained standing, restless. His body didn't know how to be still anymore. I've been thinking about what you said, about the disease being a message, and I don't know how to read it. I've spent my whole life reading spreadsheets, contracts, market analyses, but this, he gestured at himself. I don't understand any of it. Sarah picked a leaf from a nearby plant, rolled it between her fingers. What did you eat for breakfast today? The question caught him off guard. What? Breakfast. This morning. What did you eat? Michael tried to remember. Coffee. Black. Maybe a protein bar in the car. And lunch? I skipped it. Had meetings. And last night's dinner? I don't remember. Something from room service. Sarah nodded. You've spent 52 years treating your body like a machine. Fuel it enough to keep running, ignore everything else. You don't know what you eat. You don't know when you're tired. You probably don't remember the last time you felt genuinely good. She was right. He couldn't remember. That's the first lesson, she continued. Before any healing can happen, you have to learn to live in your body again, not just use it. Inhabit it. How? The hard way. The slow way. The only way? Sarah stood up. Tomorrow morning, 5:30 a.m., Hudson River Greenway, north entrance. Wear comfortable shoes. What are we doing? Walking. Just walking. Think you can handle that? Michael almost laughed. He'd run marathons. Closed billion-dollar deals. Led armies of executives. Walking? How hard could it be? The next morning, Michael discovered how wrong he was. 5:30 a.m. March air cutting through his lungs. The Hudson River gray and indifferent beside him. Sarah stood waiting in simple clothes, no designer labels, no pretense. Behind her, the city was just waking up. Joggers passed. Dog walkers nodded greetings. The world going about its business. Ready? For a walk? Of course. They started moving. Slow pace. Nothing challenging. Within 3 minutes, Michael was struggling. His breath came in short gasps. His heart pounded against his ribs like a prisoner demanding release. His legs that had once carried him through. The New York Marathon felt like concrete. Keep going, Sarah said calmly. I need a minute. No. Keep going. Slowly. But keep going. 200 meters. That's how far he made it before he had to stop. 200 meters. He leaned against a railing, gasping, sweat pouring down his face despite the cold. A woman in her 70s jogged past, barely winded. The humiliation was total. What's happening to me? He managed between breaths. Sarah stood beside him, patient. You're meeting your body, maybe for the first time. This is pathetic. This is honest. Which would you prefer, the lie that you're fine, or the truth about where you actually are? Michael watched the elderly jogger disappear around a bend. 5 years ago, he would have passed her without effort. Now he couldn't keep up. I used to be strong. You were never strong. You were just young enough that your body could absorb the abuse. Sarah's voice softened. Strength isn't about what you can endure. It's about what you're willing to change. They tried again, and again, and again. Each day that week, Michael returned to the Greenway. Each day, he made it a little farther. 300 meters, 400, half a kilometer, progress measured in inches. Pride dying by degrees. You're fighting it, Sarah observed on the 5th day. I can see it in your shoulders. Fighting what? The slowness, the weakness, the not being exceptional. She stopped walking, turned to face him. You've spent your whole life being the best, the fastest, the one who wins. Now you're the one struggling while grandmothers pass you by? You think I don't know that? I think you haven't accepted it yet. There's a difference between knowing and accepting. She started walking again. Your ego is dying, Michael. Let it. It's the first thing that needs to go. That night, Michael sat in his hotel room. He still couldn't face going home and looked at his hands. The same hands that had signed contracts worth millions. That had shaken the hands of senators and CEOs. That had held his daughters when they were small, before work consumed everything. Now they trembled when he lifted a cup of tea. He thought about what Sarah said. About ego. About identity. Who was he without the title? Without the power? Without the ability to outperform everyone in the room? Just a sick man who couldn't walk half a mile. The realization should have been devastating. Instead, something strange happened. He felt lighter, like a weight he'd been carrying for decades, had suddenly become visible, and in becoming visible became a choice. A week into their walks, Sarah changed the routine. Today we sit. They found a bench overlooking the water. The morning sun cast long shadows across the path. Close your eyes. Michael hesitated. Sitting still felt dangerous. His mind immediately started racing the diagnosis, his company, his family, all the things he should be doing. Let the thoughts come, Sarah said as if reading his mind. Don't fight them. Don't follow them. Just watch. That's it? Just sit? You have no idea how hard just sitting actually is. She paused. But yes, that's it. 20 minutes. Every day. Non-negotiable. This is how I heal? By sitting on a bench? Sarah opened her eyes, looked at him directly. You've spent 52 years running from feelings, running from stillness, running from the voice inside that kept trying to tell you something was wrong. She gestured at the river. The water doesn't rush to reach the ocean. It just flows. Sometimes fast, sometimes slow, but always moving forward. She turned back to him. You don't need to fight your way to health, Michael. You need to flow there. And that begins with learning to be still. The stillness was excruciating. 20 minutes felt like hours. His mind screamed for stimulation, emails to check, calls to make, problems to solve. Sitting quietly felt like drowning. But Michael kept coming back. Every morning, 5:30 a.m. The walking, the sitting, the endless confrontation with a self he'd spent decades avoiding. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, something began to shift. His breath deepened. His heart stopped racing quite so often. The trembling in his hands reduced. Not cured, just quieter. And in that growing stillness, memories began to surface. His father, working in the laundromat until his body gave out. His mother's face at the funeral, not grief, but resignation, as if she'd always known it would end this way. His own daughters, growing up in a house with an absent father, learning that love meant provision, not presence. His wife, lying alone in bed, waiting for a husband who always had one more email, one more call, one more crisis. Tears came. Often. Unexpected. Michael Chen, who hadn't cried in 30 years, now couldn't seem to stop. This is normal, Sarah assured him during one of their walks. You're thawing. Decades of frozen emotion finally finding their way out. It feels like drowning. It feels like feeling. You've confused the two because you've been numb for so long. She handed him a thermos of tea. They walked in silence for a while. The diagnosis gave you 6 months, she finally said. What the doctors didn't tell you is that you've been dying for years, just slowly, invisibly. The kind of death that doesn't show up on scans. What kind is that? The death of the soul. The gradual disappearance of everything that makes life worth living. She looked at him. Your body is failing. But your spirit failed a long time ago. The body is just finally catching up. The words should have hurt. Instead, they landed like truth. Michael had known it for years. Decades, maybe. The emptiness behind the achievements. The hollow feeling after every success. The voice asking, is this all there is? That he'd drowned in whiskey and work. He'd been dying long before the diagnosis. He just hadn't wanted to see it. So what now, he asked. Sarah smiled, the first full smile he'd seen from her. Now you start living. Really living. Maybe for the first time. She stood up, brushed off her coat. Same time tomorrow. And Michael? Yes? Call your wife. She deserves to know what's happening. You can't heal while you're still hiding. That night, Michael sat with his phone in his hand for 3 hours. Lisa's number glowed on the screen. His wife of 23 years. The woman who'd stood beside him through everything and who'd been standing increasingly alone. His thumb hovered over the call button. What do I even say? I'm dying. I've been hiding. I'm sorry for everything. The words felt impossible. How do you apologize for 23 years of absence? At midnight, he finally pressed call. She answered on the second ring, as if she'd been waiting. Michael? Lisa, His voice broke. I need to tell you something. Can we talk? Silence on the other end. Then softly, I've been waiting for this call for a very long time. The encounter with Sarah was just the beginning. A door opening onto a path Michael had never known existed. But knowing the path and walking it are different things, and Michael was about to discover that the hardest battles weren't physical. They were waiting for him in the pre-dawn darkness where excuses go to die. The alarm screamed at 4:45 a.m. Michael's hand found it in the darkness. Every cell in his body begged him to stay in bed. His joints ached. His head throbbed. The warmth of the blankets whispered seductive lies. You're sick. You need rest. One more day won't matter. He threw off the covers and stood up. This was week 3, the hardest week yet. The conversation with Lisa had changed everything. She'd listened for 2 hours without interrupting. The diagnosis, Sarah, the walks, the journal. 23 years of apologies pouring out like water from a broken dam. When he finished, she was silent for a long moment. I knew something was wrong, she finally said. For years I knew, but you were so good at pretending, and I was so tired of fighting. I'm sorry. I know. Her voice cracked. But sorry doesn't give me back the years, Michael. Sorry doesn't unmiss the recitals and the birthdays and the nights. I fell asleep alone. I know. So what now? What do you want from me? The question hung in the darkness between them. A chance, Michael whispered. I don't deserve it, but I'm asking anyway. A chance to become someone worth staying with. Lisa's response took 3 days to arrive. A text. Simple. Devastating in its restraint. I'll be watching. Don't make me regret this. Now standing in the cold darkness of 4:45 a.m., Michael understood what those words meant. This wasn't about him anymore. Every morning he forced himself out of bed was a promise kept. Every step on that greenway was proof that he was changing, or proof that he wasn't. The stakes had never been higher. Sarah was waiting at the usual spot. But today something was different. No walking today, she said. Then what? She handed him a pair of worn running shoes. Today you run. Michael stared at the shoes like they were weapons. I can barely walk a mile without stopping. You want me to run? I want you to try. There's a difference. I'll collapse. Like last time? Maybe. Sarah's eyes were steady. But you didn't die last time. Your ego died. Your pride died. But you're still here? She pointed toward the path stretching into the gray dawn. The question isn't whether you'll fall. You will. The question is what happens after. The first 100 meters felt like glass in his lungs. His legs screamed. His heart hammered. Every breath was a battle. Stop! 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 He stopped at the 150-meter mark, hands on knees, gasping. An old memory surfaced himself at 32. Crossing the finish line of the Chicago Marathon, arms raised. Triumphant. Invincible. That man was a stranger now. A ghost. Again, Sarah called from behind him. I can't. You can't run a marathon. You can run another 20 meters. Do that. Michael straightened. Took a breath. Started moving again. 20 more meters. Then collapse. Again. 20 more. Collapse. Again. By the end of the hour, Michael had covered less than half a mile. He lay on a bench, staring at the lightening sky, body trembling with exhaustion. Pathetic, he muttered. Honest, Sarah corrected, sitting beside him. This is where you actually are, not where you pretend to be. Not where you used to be. Here, she handed him water. Most people never know their real starting point. They live in illusions about their health, their relationships, their lives. You've lost that luxury. Michael drank slowly. His hands were shaking. Is this supposed to make me feel better? No, it's supposed to make you see clearly. Healing doesn't begin with hope. It begins with honesty. She paused. The body never lies, Michael. Only the mind does. The mornings blurred together. 4:45 a.m. Cold. Dark. The endless negotiation with a body that wanted to quit. Some days Michael made progress. A few more meters. A slightly easier breath. Small victories that felt enormous. Other days he went backward, couldn't finish what he'd done the day before. Collapsed earlier, hurt more. Why isn't it linear, he demanded one morning, frustrated after a particularly bad session. I do the work. I should see results. Sarah laughed the first time he'd heard her really laugh. You still think you can optimize healing like a business process? Set targets? Hit metrics? Why not? Because the body doesn't care about your spreadsheets. Healing isn't a straight line. It's a spiral. You circle back to the same places, but each time you're a little higher, a little wiser. She gestured at the river beside them. The water doesn't flow in straight lines either. It finds its own path. You need to learn to do the same. Week 4 brought an unexpected enemy, boredom. The initial crisis had faded. The shock of the diagnosis had settled into grim acceptance, and the daily routine wake, walk, run, fail, repeat became monotonous. Michael found himself longing for his old life. Not the stress, not the drinking, but the stimulation, the rush of a deal closing, the ping of important emails, the feeling of being needed, wanted, essential. Now he was just a sick man shuffling along a river path at dawn. You're restless, Sarah observed. I'm bored. This can't be all there is. Walking, sitting, breathing. Where's the action? Sarah nodded slowly. The addiction speaks. What addiction? Adrenaline. Cortisol. The stress chemicals your body has been marinating in for decades. She stopped walking, faced him directly. You think you're bored, but you're actually in withdrawal. Your body is screaming for its fix, Michael wanted to argue. But he recognized the feeling. The same restlessness that had driven him to check emails at 3 a.m. The inability to sit through a family dinner without itching to work. So what do I do? Nothing. That's exactly the point. You sit in the discomfort until it passes, until your body learns that stillness isn't death. She started walking again. This is the real battle, Michael. Not against the disease, against the patterns that created it. And patterns don't die easily. The breaking point came on a Thursday morning. Michael was running if you could call his labored shuffle, running when his vision started to blur. His chest tightened. Familiar warning signs. Not again. He pushed through. Faster. Harder. Trying to outrun the weakness like he'd outrun everything his whole life. His body had other plans. The world tilted. The pavement rushed up to meet him. He hit the ground hard, palms scraping, knees taking the impact. When he opened his eyes, Sarah was kneeling beside him. Why? She asked quietly. Why did you push past the signals? Michael lay there, cheek against cold concrete, tears mixing with sweat. Because stopping feels like dying. Because if I slow down, I have to feel everything. Because, he choked on the words, because I'm terrified. Not of the disease, of myself, of who I am when I'm not achieving, of the emptiness underneath everything. The confession hung in the morning air. Sarah helped him sit up slowly. There it is, she said softly. The real enemy. Not your liver, not your heart. The belief that you're only worthy when you're producing. That rest is failure. That stillness is death. She sat beside him on the cold ground. Your father died believing that. Do you want the same? Michael thought about his father, working until his heart gave out, dying at the register, his mother calling it honor. For 30 years, Michael had unconsciously tried to replicate that death, the only model of manhood he'd ever known. Work until you drop, sacrifice everything, die with your boots on. He'd called it success. It was just inherited trauma. That night, Michael called his mother. Ma, I need to ask you something about Dad. Silence on the line. His mother rarely spoke about his father's death. What about him? Was he happy at the end? Was he happy? A long pause. Then, unexpectedly, a sound Michael hadn't heard in decades. His mother crying. No, she finally said. He wasn't happy. He was exhausted. He was proud, but he was empty. And I watched him disappear into that laundry year after year, until there was nothing left. She took a shaky breath. I didn't want that life for you, Michael, but you chose it anyway. You chose his path. I know, Ma. I'm trying to choose differently now. Are you? Really? The question cut deep. I'm trying. For the first time. I'm really trying. Something shifted after that call. The morning battles continued. The pre-dawn darkness, the aching body, the voice screaming to quit. But underneath, a new voice emerged. Quieter, steadier. Your father's path doesn't have to be yours. Stillness isn't death. It's life. You are more than what you produce. Michael began to notice small changes. Not in his body that would take months, but in his mind. The boredom transformed into something else. Peace, maybe, or at least its distant cousin. The restlessness softened. Not gone, but quieter. And the terror of emptiness? It was still there. But now he could look at it. Sit with it. Even sometimes breathe through it. 6 weeks after starting, Michael actually ran for 10 continuous minutes. It wasn't fast. It wasn't pretty. A child could have walked beside him, but he didn't stop. When he finished, Sarah was watching from a bench. "How do you feel?" Michael bent over, hands on knees, gasping. But this time he was smiling. "Like I'm finally waking up. Like I've been asleep for 30 years and I'm finally waking up." Sarah nodded. "The dawn is coming, Michael. Keep running toward it." The battle with his body was slowly being won. But the war wasn't over. Because waiting in the shadows was something far more dangerous than physical weakness. An old friend, a familiar temptation, and a choice that would determine whether everything he'd built would survive or burn. The text arrived on a Tuesday evening. "Mike, it's been too long. Dinner tomorrow? I have something big. David Morrison." His oldest friend. His closest ally. His partner in self-destruction for 30 years. Michael stared at the screen for a long time. He hadn't spoken to David since before the collapse. Hadn't returned calls. Hadn't explained his disappearance. In the chaos of diagnosis and transformation, David had become part of the life Michael was running from. But you can't run from 30 years of friendship forever. "Tomorrow works." "Where?" The reply came instantly. "The usual place. 8 p.m. Like old times." The usual place was a private club in Midtown. Crystal chandeliers. Leather chairs worth more than most people's cars. A membership fee that could feed a family for a year. This was where deals were made. Alliances forged, futures decided over glasses of whiskey that cost $500 a pour. Michael had spent countless nights here. Celebrating victories, mourning defeats, slowly poisoning himself in the most elegant way possible. Walking through the entrance felt like stepping back in time. The doorman recognized him immediately. "Mr. Chen." "It's been too long, sir." "Has it?" Michael thought. Or has it not been long enough? David was waiting in their usual corner. Same tailored suit, same confident posture, same smile that promised the world and delivered chaos. "Mike!" He stood, arms open. "Jesus, look at you. You've lost weight. Whatever diet you're on, I need it." They embraced. The smell of David's cologne triggered a flood of memories, late nights, closed deals, bad decisions dressed up as good business. Sit. I ordered your usual." David gestured to the table. 2 glasses of Macallan 25 waited, amber liquid, catching the light like liquid gold. Michael stared at his glass. 8 weeks of sobriety. 8 weeks of 5 a.m. battles. 8 weeks of slowly rebuilding a body he'd spent decades destroying. And there it was. The familiar seduction. The easy escape. "So," David leaned back, swirling his drink. "Where the hell have you been? You drop off the face of the earth? Miss the quarterly presentation? Stop returning calls." "People are talking." "Let them talk. That's not like you, Mike. You've always cared about reputation. Maybe I'm learning not to." David laughed the same confident laugh that had charmed clients and intimidated competitors for decades. Right. Mike Chen, suddenly not caring what people think. He took a long sip. "Come on, what's really going on?" Michael looked at his old friend. The perfectly groomed exterior, the slight tremor in his hands he was trying to hide, the redness around his eyes that suggested too many late nights. A mirror of who Michael used to be, a preview of where that path led. "I had a health scare," Michael said carefully. "Made me reconsider some things." "Health scare?" David waved dismissively. "We all have those. It's the cost of playing at this level. You get checked out, take some pills, get back in the game." This was more serious than that. "How serious?" Michael paused. The truth sat on his tongue, heavy and dangerous. 6 months to live, maybe less. But something stopped him. Not shame, he was learning to move past that. Something else. An instinct that David wouldn't understand. Couldn't understand. Not yet. Serious enough to make me change how I'm living. David studied him for a long moment. Then his expression shifted. The charm faded. Something harder emerged. I didn't ask you here to talk about your health crisis, Mike. I asked you here because I need you. For what? David leaned forward, lowering his voice. The biggest deal of our careers. Hanson Industries is vulnerable. Their CEO is about to be hit with a scandal. I have the details. Don't ask how. If we move fast, we can acquire their entire Asia division for pennies on the dollar. He slid a folder across the table. 15 million in profit, minimum. Maybe 20 if we play it right. Michael didn't touch the folder. That sounds like insider information, David. It sounds like opportunity. The kind we've built our careers on. The kind that destroys people. David's eyes hardened. Since when do you care about that? The question hit like a slap. Since when do you care? The truth was he never had. For 25 years, Michael had operated in the gray zones. Never technically illegal, he was too smart for that. But never ethical either. He'd justified it with the usual excuses. Everyone does it. It's just business. If I don't, someone else will. The bodies left in his wake, careers destroyed, companies gutted, families devastated by layoffs. He'd engineered they'd never kept him up at night. They were just numbers, acceptable losses. But sitting here now, looking at David's hungry eyes, Michael saw it differently. He saw his own reflection. The man he'd been. The man he was terrified of becoming again. I can't do this, David. The words came out before he could stop them. David blinked. Can't or won't? Both. What the hell is wrong with you? David's voice rose, attracting glances from nearby tables. He lowered it again, leaning closer. This is guaranteed money. Easy money. The kind of score we've dreamed about. I don't dream about that anymore. Then what do you dream about? Yoga, meditation? Whatever wellness bullshit has gotten into your head. Michael thought about the dawn battles, the slow healing, the conversations with Sarah, the journal filled with regrets he was finally facing. I dream about being someone my daughters aren't ashamed of. I dream about looking in the mirror and not hating what I see. He pushed the folder back across the table. I dream about being alive, really alive, not whatever we've been calling it. David stared at him like he was speaking a foreign language. You've lost it, he finally said. Whatever happened to you, it broke something. Maybe it fixed something. Fixed? Look at you, Mike. You look like hell. You've abandoned your career. You're talking about feelings like some therapy patient. He grabbed the whiskey glass, pushed it toward Michael. This isn't you. The real you is sitting in this chair. Closing this deal, being the killer we both know you are. Michael looked at the glass. The amber liquid. The familiar burn waiting in his throat. The easy escape from everything he was feeling. His hand moved toward it. Muscle memory. 30 years of conditioning. Then he stopped. In that moment, Michael saw two futures stretching out before him. In one, he picked up the glass, took the drink, closed the deal, slipped back into the comfortable prison of his old life. The money would come. The respect would return. And in 6 months or 6 years, if he was lucky, he would die exactly as his father had. Empty, exhausted, alone. In the other future, he walked away. From David. From the deal. From the man he used to be. The path ahead was uncertain. Probably painful. Definitely harder than staying. But it was his path. Not his father's. Not society's. His. Michael withdrew his hand. I'm sorry, David. I can't be that person anymore. Can't? You mean won't. I mean can't. That man is dead. I'm trying to become someone else. He stood up slowly. His body ached. It always ached now, but his mind was clear. You should get checked out. Seriously. You look worse than I did before I collapsed. David's face twisted. Don't project your weakness onto me. It's not weakness. It took me 52 years to learn that, but I finally understand. Michael placed a hand on his old friend's shoulder. The strongest thing I've ever done is admit I was dying. Not from the disease. From the life. He turned toward the door. Take care of yourself, David. I hope you figure it out before your body makes the choice for you. Outside, the night air hit Michael's face like a blessing. He stood on the sidewalk, breathing deeply, watching taxis stream past in rivers of light. His phone buzzed. David, you'll regret this. You'll come crawling back. They always do. Michael didn't respond. Instead, he opened a different thread. Lisa, I just walked away from a very old version of myself. It was harder than I expected. But I did it. I wanted you to know. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, her response. I'm proud of you. Come home tonight. If you're ready. Michael walked for an hour before hailing a cab. Not because he needed the time, because he wanted to feel each step, to notice the city he'd ignored for decades, to inhabit his body instead of just using it. Sarah's words echoed in his mind. The water doesn't rush to reach the ocean. It just flows. He was flowing now. Toward something? He didn't know exactly what yet. But for the first time, he trusted the current. At 11 p.m., Michael Chen walked through the front door of his Greenwich home. Lisa was waiting in the living room. She looked older than he remembered. Tired, wary, but she was there. "Hi," he said. "Hi." They stood in silence for a long moment. 23 years of marriage. 23 years of distance, all of it hanging in the air between them. "I don't know how to do this," Michael admitted. "I don't know how to be a husband. I never really learned." Lisa's eyes glistened. "Then learn. That's all I've ever wanted. For you to try." She walked toward him. Slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. And then her arms were around him. And he was crying again. He couldn't seem to stop crying these days, and she was crying too. "Welcome home," she whispered. Walking away from David was just the first test. The path ahead held harder trials, including a moment when Michael's healing body would betray him again. But for now, in the quiet of a home he'd neglected for decades, something broken was beginning to mend. Not the body, not yet. The heart. 3 months into his transformation, Michael made the mistake of believing he was healed. The numbers were encouraging. Blood pressure down, liver function improving, resting heart rate lower than it had been in years. Dr. Patterson used words like remarkable and unexpected progress. The morning runs had extended to 30 minutes. Not fast, never fast, but continuous. The walks with Sarah had become conversations instead of survival exercises. His body felt different. Lighter. More alive, Lisa noticed too. "You're becoming someone I recognize," she said one evening. "Someone I used to know." Michael smiled. Held her hand. Believed the worst was behind him. He was wrong. The mistake began with ambition. A corporate wellness marathon was happening in the city. 10K. Not a full marathon, but a real race. Real competition. Real finish line. Michael mentioned it to Sarah during their morning walk. "I'm thinking of signing up." She stopped walking. "When is it?" 3 weeks. "That's too soon. I've been making progress." "Good progress." "You've said so yourself." "Progress isn't the same as ready." Sarah's voice carried a warning Michael didn't want to hear. "Your body is healing, but healing isn't linear, and it isn't complete. So when will I be ready? 6 months? A year? Never? When your body tells you. Not your ego." Michael nodded. Pretended to agree, but the seed was already planted. He registered that night. The logo on the confirmation email showed runners crossing a finish line, arms raised, faces triumphant. Michael imagined himself among them, proving something. To Lisa, to his daughters, to David, who'd predicted his failure, to himself. He began training in secret. Extra runs after Sarah's sessions, pushing harder, going longer, the old competitive fire returning, dressed up as commitment to health. His body sent warnings, an unusual fatigue that lingered through the day, a tightness in his chest that came and went. Moments of dizziness he dismissed as dehydration. Just a little more, he told himself. Just a few more weeks. Then I'll rest. The same lie he'd told for 25 years. The morning of the race was perfect. October in New York. Crisp air. Golden light. Thousands of runners stretching, laughing, taking selfies with their race bibs. Lisa had insisted on coming. "I want to see you cross that finish line," she said. "I want to be there." Michael hugged her tight. "I'll make you proud. You already have. Just finish. That's all I care about." At the starting line, surrounded by bodies vibrating with anticipation, Michael felt invincible. 3 months ago, he couldn't walk 200 meters. Now he was about to run 10 kilometers. "Look how far I've come." The gun fired. The first 3 kilometers felt like flying. His legs found their rhythm. His breath came easy. Other runners surrounded him, some faster, some slower, but he held his pace. Steady. Controlled. "I can do this. I'm actually doing this." At kilometer 4, the first warning came, a flutter in his chest. Irregular, like a bird trapped beneath his ribs. He slowed slightly. The flutter passed. Just nerves. Keep going. At kilometer 5, the world began to blur. Not dramatically, just a soft unfocusing at the edges. Colors bleeding into each other. Sounds becoming muffled, distant. Halfway there. Just 5 more kilometers. He pushed on. Kilometer 6. His vision narrowed to a tunnel. His heart hammered not the strong rhythm of exertion, but something chaotic, desperate. Other runners passed him. Then more. Then more. Something's wrong. His legs felt disconnected from his body. His breath came in shallow gasps that never seemed to fill his lungs. Stop! You need to stop. But stopping meant failing. Stopping meant admitting he wasn't ready. Stopping meant returning to the helpless man who couldn't walk a quarter mile. He couldn't be that man again. He kept running. The collapse happened at kilometer 7. One moment he was moving forward. The next, the sky was above him and the pavement was pressed against his cheek. Voices, shouting, someone rolling him onto his back. Sir, can you hear me? He couldn't answer. His chest was being crushed by an invisible weight. Each heartbeat felt like it might be the last. This is it. This is how I die. Not in a hospital room in 6 months. Here, now, on a race course, because I couldn't stop pushing. The irony was bitter. When Michael woke, he was in an ambulance. The familiar chaos of emergency response. Monitors beeping. An oxygen mask pressed against his face. A paramedic speaking in calm, urgent tones. You're going to be okay, sir. Just breathe. We're taking you to the hospital. The next hours were a blur of tests, IV lines, and worried faces. Lisa appeared at some point he wasn't sure when. Her face was pale. Terrified. She held his hand and said nothing. Words weren't necessary. Everything had already been said. Doctor. Patterson arrived that evening. His expression was carefully neutral, but Michael had learned to read doctors. The neutrality was a mask for frustration. You pushed too hard, Mr. Chen. After I specifically warned you about gradual recovery. I know. Your heart went into arrhythmia. If you'd continued another kilometer, we might be having a very different conversation, or no conversation at all. Michael stared at the ceiling. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. How much damage did I do? You've set yourself back. How much? We won't know for a few weeks. Patterson closed the chart. But more concerning than the physical damage is the pattern. You're treating recovery like another competition, another deal to close, another target to hit. I thought I was doing well. The numbers? Numbers aren't everything. I thought a man who spent his career in finance would understand that better than most. Patterson moved toward the door. Healing isn't a straight line, Mr. Chen, and it can't be forced. You either learn that lesson or you die from ignoring it. That night, alone in the hospital room, Michael called Sarah. She answered on the first ring. As if she'd been waiting. I heard, she said. No judgment, just acknowledgement. You told me I wasn't ready. I did. I didn't listen. You weren't ready to listen either. Michael closed his eyes. The oxygen monitor beeped steadily beside him. Why do I keep doing this? Why can't I just... Stop? Silence on the line. Then Sarah's voice, gentle but firm. Because stopping feels like dying. Because your entire identity is built on pushing, achieving, proving. And changing that identity feels more terrifying than destroying your body. Michael thought about the race. The desperate need to cross that finish line. The inability to stop even when his body was screaming. How do I change? You start by accepting something you've fought your entire life. What? That you're not special. That the rules apply to you. That your body isn't a machine to be optimized, it's a home to be inhabited. She paused. And you learn to be kind to yourself. Maybe for the first time. The next morning, Lisa arrived early. She sat in the chair beside his bed, looking exhausted. Older than he'd ever seen her. I was terrified, she said quietly. When I saw you collapse on that course, I thought I was watching you die. I'm sorry. You keep saying that. But then you keep doing the same things. The words stung because they were true. I don't know how to be different, Michael admitted. I've been pushing my whole life. It's the only way I know. Lisa reached for his hand. Her fingers were cold. When Emma was learning to walk, do you remember what happened when she fell? Michael tried to recall. Those years were a blur of work and absence. I wasn't there. No, you weren't. Lisa's voice held no accusation. Just sadness. She would fall, and she would cry, and I would pick her up, and I would tell her the same thing every time. What? It's okay to fall. Everyone falls. What matters is that you get up gently. She squeezed his hand. You know how to get up, Michael. You've been getting up your whole life, but you don't know how to do it gently. You get up fighting, angry, desperate to prove something. She looked into his eyes. Maybe it's time to learn a different way. Michael spent 4 days in the hospital. He didn't make calls, didn't check emails, didn't plan or strategize or push. Instead, he thought about gentleness. It was a foreign concept. His father had never been gentle. The business world wasn't gentle. He'd spent 5 decades believing that softness was weakness. But lying in that hospital bed forced into stillness, Michael began to see it differently. The gentleness Lisa showed Emma when she fell. The patience Sarah showed during their walks. The way his mother had quietly tended the laundry for decades without complaint. There was strength in gentleness. A different kind of strength, one he'd never learned. On day 5, Sarah visited. She brought tea and a small potted plant. For your room at home, she said. Something to take care of besides yourself. Michael looked at the plant. A simple fern, delicate fronds reaching toward the light. What if I kill it? Then you plant another. That's how gardens work. She sat beside him. How are you feeling? Humbled, scared, grateful to be alive. Good combination. She smiled. The relapse wasn't a failure, Michael. It was a lesson. Now you know something you didn't know before. What? That the old patterns are still there, waiting, watching for their chance to take over. She touched the fern gently. Healing isn't just about getting stronger. It's about staying awake, noticing when you start to slip, choosing differently in the moment. What if I can't? You can. You just proved it. Proved it? I collapsed on a race course, but you survived. And you're here, asking these questions instead of planning your next conquest. Sarah stood up. That's progress, Michael. Real progress. The kind that doesn't show up on scans. The relapse broke something in Michael. Not his body, though that was damaged, too. It broke his certainty. His belief that he could force his way to health through sheer will. And in that breaking, space opened. Space for something new. Something gentler. Something real. But the lessons weren't over. The hardest one was still ahead. The one that would require him to stand before the world and finally tell the truth. 6 months after his diagnosis, Michael Chen was still alive. The doctors couldn't explain it. His liver function had improved by 40%. His heart rhythm had stabilized. The markers that had predicted his death were retreating one by one. Whatever you're doing, Dr. Patterson said during his latest checkup, keep doing it. Michael thought about the dawn walks, the stillness, the tears, the slow, painful work of becoming human again. I'm learning to live, he said, maybe for the first time. Patterson nodded, not fully understanding. Doctors rarely did. They saw the body. They missed the soul. The call from the board came on a Tuesday. Michael, we need to discuss your future with the company. He'd been on medical leave for 6 months. His position had been filled temporarily. The quarterly reports continued without him. The empire he'd spent 25 years building had adapted to his absence with unsettling ease. What did you have in mind? A transition meeting. Friday. The full board. A pause. We think it's time to make some decisions. Michael understood. They wanted to push him out gracefully. A quiet retirement. A generous severance. A press release praising his contributions. The old Michael would have fought. Maneuvered. Called in favors and leveraged relationships. This Michael had a different idea. He told Lisa that night. They want to retire me. She looked up from her book. How do you feel about that? Relieved, actually. I never thought I'd say that. He sat beside her. But I want to do something first. Something I should have done a long time ago. What? Tell the truth. Not just to the board. To everyone. Lisa studied his face. What truth? All of it. The collapse. The diagnosis. The 6 months. What I've learned. He took her hand. I've spent my whole career projecting strength, control, invincibility, and it was all a lie. That's a big risk. People will see you differently. I hope so. I want them to. Friday arrived too quickly. The boardroom was exactly as Michael remembered, the same mahogany table, the same leather chairs, the same floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the city he'd conquered. But Michael was different. He'd lost 30 pounds. His suit hung loosely. His face, once puffy from alcohol, had sharpened into unfamiliar angles. He looked older, harder, and somehow more alive. 12 faces turned toward him as he entered. Old colleagues, old rivals, people he'd intimidated, impressed, and occasionally destroyed. Now they looked at him with curiosity, and perhaps beneath their masks, with pity. Poor Michael. Couldn't handle the pressure, burned out like so many others. They had no idea. The chairman spoke first. Michael, thank you for coming. We know this has been a difficult period. We want you to know that your contributions over the past 25 years. Richard, if I may. The chairman blinked. Interrupting wasn't part of the script. Of course. Michael stood. Slowly, deliberately. He looked at each face around the table before speaking. I didn't come here to receive a severance package. I came here to tell you something I should have said a long time ago. Silence. The room tensed. 18 months ago, I collapsed in this building, in a room very similar to this one. He paused. What you don't know is what happened after. He told them everything. The diagnosis. 6 months to live. The doctor's words that should have ended him. The bookstore in Brooklyn. Sarah? The dawn battles. The humiliation of not being able to walk a quarter mile. The relapse that nearly killed him. The slow, painful process of becoming human again. The board members shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't a quarterly report. This wasn't strategic positioning. This was something they had no protocol for. Raw truth. I spent 25 years in this company, Michael continued. 25 years climbing, fighting, winning, and I was good at it. The numbers proved it. The promotions proved it. The respect or fear I saw in your eyes proved it. He walked toward the window. The city sprawled beneath him, indifferent. But I was dying. Not just physically, spiritually, emotionally. I was hollow inside, and I filled that hollowness with work and alcohol, and the illusion of control. He turned back to face them. I told myself it was success. It was suicide in slow motion. The silence stretched. Someone coughed. A pen tapped nervously against the table. Finally, the chairman spoke. Michael, we appreciate your candor, but I'm not sure what you're asking us to do with this information. I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm asking you to see something. He looked around the room. How many of you can't sleep without pills? How many of you have marriages that exist only on paper? How many of you have children who've stopped calling? No one answered. But eyes dropped. Jaws tightened. I'm not judging. I was worse than all of you. I'm just asking you to see what I couldn't see until my body forced me to. He sat down slowly. We call this success. The titles, the money, the power. But look at us. Look at what it costs. Look at what we sacrifice. His voice softened. I'm not here to lecture. I'm here to warn you, because someone should have warned me, and no one did. After the meeting, something unexpected happened. The board members didn't rush out. They lingered. One by one, they approached Michael. Robert, the head of operations, gripped his hand. My wife left me last year. I never told anyone. Margaret, the legal director, had tears in her eyes. I had a cancer scare 6 months ago. I went back to work the day after my biopsy. Didn't even wait for results. James, the youngest board member, spoke quietly. I've been having chest pains. For months. I haven't seen a doctor. I've been too scared. Michael listened to each one. Not with advice. Not with solutions, just with presence. For perhaps the first time in this building's history, people were being honest with each other. The story spread faster than Michael expected. Someone on the board shared it with a colleague. That colleague mentioned it to a journalist. Within weeks, requests for interviews began arriving. Michael said no to all of them. But then Lisa suggested something different. What if your story could help people, not just the executives, regular people? People who are killing themselves the same way you were. I'm not a motivational speaker. No. You're something better. You're a survivor. And you're willing to tell the truth about what nearly killed you. Michael thought about it for days. The exposure, the vulnerability, the complete destruction of the image he'd spent his career building. Then he thought about the people he might reach, the warnings he might give, the deaths he might prevent. He said yes. The first interview was with a business podcast. So, Michael, you're saying that everything we're taught about success is wrong? I'm saying that what we call success is often a very comfortable way of dying. We sacrifice health for wealth. We trade relationships for achievements. We postpone living until we've made it, and then we discover we're too broken to enjoy what we've built. That's a harsh assessment. It's an honest one. I know because I lived it. I was the poster child for corporate success, and I was 6 months from dead. The episode was downloaded 500,000 times in the first week. Emails began arriving, hundreds of them, then thousands. I heard your interview. I'm going to see a doctor tomorrow for the first time in 5 years. I've been working 80-hour weeks. After listening to you, I went home early and had dinner with my kids. They looked at me like I was a stranger. My husband is exactly like you were. I made him listen. He cried for the first time in our marriage. Each message was a life touched. A warning received. A potential tragedy averted. Michael read every single one. One evening, after a long day of interviews, Lisa found him crying at his desk. "What's wrong?" He showed her an email. "From a woman in Ohio. My father listened to your podcast on his commute. The next day, he went to the hospital. They found a blockage that would have killed him within weeks. He's having surgery on Thursday. You saved his life. I don't know how to thank you." Michael looked at his wife. "I spent 25 years making money. Moving numbers. Building things that didn't matter." He wiped his eyes. "This matters. For the first time, something I'm doing actually matters." Sarah visited that weekend. They walked along the Hudson as they had so many times before. But now Michael walked without stopping, without gasping, without the shadow of death pressing on his chest. "You've come a long way," she observed. "I had a good teacher. You had a willing student. That's rarer than good teachers." She smiled. "What's next?" Michael thought about the emails, the interviews, the lives being touched by his story. "I want to do more, not just talk about what happened to me. I want to help people before they hit bottom, before their bodies give them ultimatums. What does that look like?" "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." Sarah nodded. "The student becomes the teacher. That's how it's supposed to work." The revelation changed everything, not just for Michael, but for everyone who heard his story. But some battles can only be fought face to face, and the hardest one was still waiting. An old friend, a familiar face, and a confrontation that would determine whether the past could finally be laid to rest. The call came at 3 a.m. Michael's phone buzzed in the darkness. An unknown number. He almost ignored it. Something made him answer. "Mike!" The voice was barely recognizable. Slurred. "Broken. Mike, I need help." "David Morrison." Michael sat up in bed. Lisa stirred beside him. "David, where are you?" "I don't know. Some hotel. I can't breathe right." My chest. The fear in David's voice was something Michael had never heard before. Not in 30 years of friendship. Not even when deals collapsed or marriages ended. This was different. This was a man meeting his mortality. Michael found him at a midtown hotel. Room 1847. The door was unlocked. Inside, the room looked like a disaster zone. Empty bottles. Scattered papers. Clothes thrown everywhere. David sat on the floor by the window, still in his suit. But the suit was wrinkled, stained. His face was gray. His breathing shallow and irregular. "Took you long enough," he said. A ghost of his old sarcasm. "What happened?" "Heart attack. Small one. At least that's what the doctor at urgent care said." He laughed bitterly. "Told me to go to the hospital. I came here instead." "That's insane. I know what I need." David's eyes found Michael's. "I need to understand how you did it." Michael sat down across from him. The carpet was expensive. Everything in David's life was expensive. And none of it had saved him. "Did what?" "Changed." Walked away. "Became whatever you've become." David's hand trembled as he reached for a glass of water. "I watched your interviews. Read the articles. Everyone calling you brave, inspiring." He set the glass down without drinking. "I thought you'd lost your mind. Thought you'd gone soft. But tonight, when I felt my heart stutter," his voice cracked. I understood. Michael remembered their last meeting. The private club. The whiskey. David's contempt for his transformation. "You'll be back. They always come back." Now David sat crumpled on a hotel floor, finally facing what Michael had faced 18 months ago. "It's not too late," Michael said. "That's the first thing you need to know. Whatever the doctors say, whatever your body is telling. It's not too late to change." "How can you be sure?" "Because I was worse than you. 6 months to live. That's what they gave me, and I'm still here." David looked at him. Really looked. Taking in the weight loss, the clarity in Michael's eyes, the strange peace that had replaced the old restlessness. "You really did it," he whispered. "You really changed." "I'm still changing. Every day. It never stops." They talked until dawn. David told him things he'd never shared before. The loneliness behind the success, the terror of quiet moments, the second divorce that was finalizing next month, the estranged children who wouldn't return his calls. "I built everything you're supposed to build," David said. "The money, the power, the reputation, and I'm sitting on a hotel floor at 4 a.m., terrified that my heart is going to stop." "The fear is good," Michael said. "Fear woke me up. It can wake you up, too. I don't know how to be anyone else. This is all I know." I said the same thing. Word for word. Sarah told me something I didn't understand until later. "What? You don't become someone else. You become who you were before the world told you who to be." As the sun rose over Manhattan, Michael made David a deal. "Come with me tomorrow morning, 5:30 a.m. Hudson River. Just walk. Nothing more." "I can't." "That's what I said. For 52 years I said I can't. I don't have time. It's not for me." Michael stood up. "And then I almost died. And I realized I can't was just another way of saying I won't." David stared at the window. The city was waking up. Millions of people starting their days. Most of them sleepwalking through lives they didn't choose. "One morning," he finally said. "I'll try one morning." The next day, David didn't show up. Michael waited at the Greenway until 6:30. Cold air. Empty path. No David. He wasn't surprised. "Not really. You can't force someone to save themselves. You can only show them the door. They have to choose to walk through." 3 weeks passed. No word from David. Then Michael received a text. "I'm checking into a treatment center. 30 days, maybe more. You were right. About everything. I'm sorry for what I said at the club. I was scared. I'm still scared. But I'm going anyway." Michael read it 3 times. Then he typed back, "Scared is the right place to start. I'll be here when you get out." David's recovery wasn't like Michael's. It was messier. More relapses. More resistance. David had spent 60 years building walls and they didn't come down easily. But he kept trying. 30 days became 60. Then 90. Slowly, painfully, something began to shift. Michael visited when he could. They walked together slowly, stopping. Often along the same paths where Michael had learned to live again. "I still don't understand it," David admitted one morning. "How you gave up everything we worked for. The power. The respect. I didn't give it up. I traded it. For what?" Michael stopped walking. They stood overlooking the river, the city rising behind them. "For this. For being able to stand here and actually feel it. For conversations with my wife that go deeper than schedules. For knowing my daughters as adults, not just obligations." He turned to David. "For waking up in the morning and not dreading the day." 6 months later, David stood before his own board. Michael wasn't there. This was David's moment, his story to tell. But David called him afterward. "I told them everything. The heart attack. The treatment. The reason I disappeared." His voice was different now. Softer. Less performance, more presence. Half of them looked at me like I was crazy. "And the other half? The other half thanked me." One of them cried. David laughed, a real laugh, not the polished one from boardrooms. "Can you believe it? Marcus Way. Toughest guy on the board. Crying in front of everyone. I believe it. We're all carrying more than we show. I wish I'd known that 30 years ago. We know it now. That's what matters." Not everyone was ready to hear the message. Some former colleagues dismissed both of them. Called them weak. Said they'd lost their edge. "They're scared," Sarah observed during one of her visits. "You represent something terrifying to people who've built their identity on the old model." "What's that?" "Proof that they have a choice, and that they're choosing not to make it." Michael thought about the people who'd pushed back, the executives who'd laughed at his story, the old friends who'd stopped calling. Will they ever change? Some will. Usually after their own body delivers the ultimatum. Sarah shook her head. Others won't. They'll die in their armor, never knowing who they were underneath. That seems like a waste. It is. But you can't save everyone. You can only light the path and hope they follow. One evening, Michael and David sat on Michael's back porch. 2 men who'd spent decades destroying themselves together, now slowly rebuilding. Together. "I never thanked you," David said, "for coming to that hotel. For not giving up on me. You would have done the same." "No, I wouldn't have." "That's the point." David stared into the darkness. "The old David would have written you off, called you weak, moved on. But you're not the old David. I'm trying not to be. He turned to Michael. That's what you taught me. Not through the interviews or the speeches. Through the 3 a.m. phone call. Through sitting with me on that floor. He paused. You showed me what it looks like to be strong enough to be kind. Michael thought about that phrase often in the weeks that followed. Strong enough to be kind. His whole life he'd believed strength meant hardness, dominance, never showing weakness. But real strength was something different. It was Sarah, patiently walking beside him when he could barely stand. It was Lisa, giving him another chance when he didn't deserve it. It was his mother, tending her garden for decades without complaint. It was David, finally asking for help after 60 years of pretending. He didn't need it. Strength wasn't about what you could conquer. It was about what you could embrace. The reckoning with David closed a chapter that had been open for 30 years. 2 men who'd walked into darkness together had finally found their way toward light. But Michael's journey wasn't complete. One final step remained, not just to survive, not just to heal, to give back everything he'd learned, to light the path for others still lost in the dark. 2 years after being told he had 6 months to live, Michael Chen stood at a window overlooking Brooklyn. The building was a converted warehouse. Red brick, large windows. Nothing like the glass towers where he'd spent his career. This was the home of Second Life Foundation. His resurrection. The idea came from Lisa. You've been given something rare, she said one evening. A second chance. What are you going to do with it? I don't know. The corporate world doesn't want me anymore. Then build something new. Something that matters. Michael had spent 50 years learning how not to live. Now he was learning how to live. That knowledge was worth sharing. Second Life Foundation opened quietly on a Tuesday in March. No press release. Just a simple space with folding chairs, a coffee maker, and a sign. For those who've hit bottom, and those who want to avoid it. The first meeting had 7 people. A burned-out lawyer. A retired surgeon with shaking hands. A young tech executive already showing signs of destruction. And David, ready to share his own story. I'm not here as an expert, Michael began. I'm here as a survivor. He looked at the tired, guarded faces before him. 2 years ago, I was given 6 months to live. The doctor said my body was failing. What they didn't say was that my soul had failed years earlier. He paused. I'm not going to tell you how to fix your life. I'm going to tell you what broke mine, and what I found on the other side. The meetings grew. 7 became 15. 15 became 30. Michael never advertised. The word spread on its own through whispered recommendations, through the quiet network of the broken. Not everyone was saved. Thomas came for 3 months. Made progress. Started sleeping better. Then he got a promotion and stopped coming. 6 months later, Michael heard the news. Massive stroke. Dead at 53. You did everything you could, Lisa said. It wasn't enough. You lit the path. He chose not to walk it. That was his choice. Not your failure. But for every Thomas, there were dozens of others. Elena, who left her law firm to become a hospice chaplain. James, who finally got the surgery he'd been postponing and lived. Margaret, who reconciled with her estranged mother 3 weeks before the old woman died. Each story was proof that change was possible. On the 2nd anniversary of his diagnosis, Michael returned to the Hudson River Greenway, same path where he'd barely survived 200 meters, same bench where he'd gasped and struggled. Now he ran the full length without stopping. Not fast. Never fast, but continuous. Steady. Alive. He sat on that bench and thought about the man he'd been. The man who measured life in quarterly earnings. That man was gone. The final meeting of the season came on a cool October evening. 50 people filled the warehouse. David sat in his usual spot, now a co-leader. Michael stood before them. Success isn't what we've been told. It's not the money or the title or the corner office. He looked around the room. Success is being alive. Really alive. Present in your body. Connected to the people you love. His voice softened. Most of us don't learn this until it's almost too late. But you're here. You're learning. That means you have time. That night, Michael walked home under the stars. He thought about his father, who worked until his heart stopped. About his mother, still tending her garden at 83. About Emma and Sophie finally knowing their father. About Lisa, who'd waited 23 years for him to wake up. At home, she was reading by the fire. Thank you, he said, for staying, for believing I could change. She leaned against his shoulder. I always knew you were in there. I was just waiting for you to find your way out. Epilogue. 2.5 years after his death sentence, Michael crossed the finish line of the New York City Marathon. His time was slow, almost last in his age group, but as his daughters embraced him, as Lisa pressed her face against his chest, as David raised his fist from the sidelines, Michael understood. This was success. This was the life he'd almost missed. This was resurrection. They gave me 6 months. I'm using them, all of them, however. Many I get not to return to who I was, but to become who I was always supposed to be. The death sentence wasn't an ending. It was an invitation. You don't have to wait for your body's ultimatum. You can start living now.
They gave me 6 months to breathe, 6 months to find what I couldn't see. I was living, but I wasn't alive, building empires while I died inside. Every heartbeat was a warning sign that I ignored until I ran out of time. But I'm rising now from the ashes of who I used to be. I'm rising now, finally learning how to breathe. They said 6 months I chose to live. This is my second chance, and I won't let go. It's never too late to start again.